today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about on women keeping. We want to have some proficiency even in our partner's area of expertise because stuff happens. The most successful partnership are partnerships where every piece of shared vision and goal is articulated, mapped out with milestones. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we are talking about women keeping, which is the flip side of man keeping. And let's face it, folks, if you're in the position where you think you're keeping someone, there's still kind of a victim, abuser, maybe rescuer, a victim triangle around it. We've talked about the victim triangle versus the empowerment dynamic in past episodes. Check it out if you missed it. The fact of the matter is there is a better way than being a rescuer, a victim, or an abuser. And man-keeping is a little derogatory, just like women-keeping. A kept woman was a little derogatory. In fact, I would argue that we are experiencing man-keeping today for the same reason that we're seeing more and greater equality. We're experiencing this sense of man-keeping because women are reacting to having been kept women. They're embracing this new position of power and authority, and they're calling on men to step up. So let's just talk about, has women keeping really changed in this shifting world from unequal to equal? Here's a statistic for you. In 1972, 85% of couples had men as primary earners. Today, 55% do. 29% have women earning more, and 16% earn roughly the same. There's a sentiment out there, and the sentiment is, from men, we both work, but I still feel like the provider. Why is that? The truth is that even in dual income households, men are more likely to carry and handle the long-term financial strategy. Women are more likely to manage the day-to-day money flow. And why is that? You know, I guess I could roll out the old argument about brain structure, but I think this one is more, that's the way it was, and so that's how we're doing it. And so the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, we're moving to equity and equality. We're moving to a society where we all advance ourselves on our strengths. We're moving to marriages that are partnerships and where we lead in our strengths. What if we started to take apart the financial side of marriage in the same way that women who are complaining about man-keeping are demanding that we take apart the emotional dynamic? And in the last episode, we took apart the emotional dynamic and we advocated for men to step up emotionally. So we're not against this. I just want to be even-handed. I want to make sure we're covering all of it. So let's look at brains, like brain structure and socialization. How do they interact here? Men's brain patterns lean toward abstract, long-range planning. It's because their parietal lobe system is slightly more developed. And at the same time, that long-term, long-range planning is reinforced by a societal message about providing. There is a constant societal message about provision. It's in our religions, plural. It's in our secular culture. And even though we're moving into this culture where, as I stated earlier, 29% of women are earning more, and that will change. In the next 10 years, it'll be 39 until it's equal. Even though we're moving into that stage, that message of provision is still present. Women's brains, because they have more connections between the lobes, lean towards multitask integration and immediate problem solving. That's because it's the corpus callosum, or their emotional processing center, has got more neural activity than men. This is reinforced by the social norm of women should be tasked with bill paying and short-term household management. Does that mean it should always be that way? No. Does it mean that there are women who can't handle long-term thinking? No. Does it mean that there are men who can't handle day-to-day bill payment? No. It just means that In addition to the differences in brain structure, we've got societal norms that we need to disconnect and take apart. And let's face it, generalizations about male brains or brains that evolve in a genetically male body and generalizations about brains that develop in a genetically female body are generalizations. There are scales that these things occur on. There are exceptions to every rule. The carryover from man keeping is that women overfunction emotionally and men overfunction financially, right? I mean, men, because they're more disconnected emotionally and less risk averse in general, are better suited for managing money. Well, that's a bunch of poppycock. Just like women should handle all the emotional tasks is poppycock. What works is a strategy where the two individuals, whether it be two men, two women, or a man or a woman, sit down, lean into their strengths, and make a plan from there. And that's what we're going to cover in this episode. A woman writes to us, "We both earn, so why does he still make all the big money calls?" When men are primary earners, they lead in finances in 70% of cases. When women earn more, they're less likely to take over finances, often defaulting to shared or male-led management due to habit or comfort. This is a statistic. In man keeping, men can avoid emotional management. In women keeping, women can avoid financial management. Both leave one partner feeling kept. In fact, the power dynamic of the relationship shifts depending on whether we're talking an emotional context or whether we're talking about a financial context. Where do we want the power dynamic to be? It's a partnership. In a partnership, the power dynamic should be equal. Not necessarily equal emotionally and equal financially in terms of responsibility, but equal in terms of decision making and moving forward. A listener, a man, 33, says, "She earns more now. Why do I feel like I've lost my role?" A lot of men are having this experience. Now that we're seeing more and more women as prime wage earners, a lot of men have lost their sense of what their role is as a provider. Some of what we're seeing in terms of man keeping is a generation of men who don't know what provision means anymore. Or if they're not providers, what are they? Women, over time, in order to become more equal, have had to master linear goal-oriented thinking, which their brains are less structured to master it, but they have mastered it. Many of my clients are alpha women who are CEOs, CFOs, COOs of their company. They're entrepreneurs. They are out there kicking butts and taking names. They've mastered goal-oriented linear thought, and part of what separates them from the pack is they're able to apply their ecological strength in a male-dominated culture. Being able to master the ecology actually gives you an edge. When you can read the room quickly and intuitively know how to react emotionally, it's much easier to achieve your goal. The reason why, fellas, we need to work on our emotional fluency, our ability to identify emotion in ourselves, in others, articulate them, and make plans based on enrolling people in where it is we want to go. The reason why we need to do that so desperately is because if what you want is to be successful and fulfilled, it requires being all of who you can be. And emotional mastery is part of being a human being. It's not like we're born, men are supposed to be money managers, men are supposed to be hunters, and women are supposed to be family raisers. That's like, it's like denying that there's this bigger thing called humanity that the genders are a part of. And as participants in humanity, guys, we need to go with it. We need to get there. We need to grow our sense of emotional connection just the way these ladies are mastering linear goal-oriented thought. And in some cases, we have women entrepreneurs who are starting businesses with a whole different culture, not a masculine linear culture, but with a more collaborative female-based culture. And those companies perform phenomenally well. They have super high levels of retention. Of course, if you're working collaboratively, you're going to have higher retention. So that's what's in it for us, guys. To learn to operate both ecologically and linear way, it means greater wins, bigger wins. A female listener, 35, says, I want him involved in emotional life and I want to be part of our financial vision. And we both learn. Yes, there are biological leanings, but the truth is the brain has the human brain, no matter what kind of body it evolves in, has incredible plasticity. What that means is we can lay in new neural networks. We can lay in new connections. We can lay in new ways of operating. We just have to be willing to exercise our brain. The brain is a muscle. It needs to be exercised. If you have a part of your brain that's underdeveloped, the way to grow it is to focus on it. We've talked about this tremendously when we talk about trigger management. Well, the same is true in terms of being emotionally aware and having emotional fluency. We need to focus on it. In the same way, ladies, God, I haven't got a statistic on this, but I know multiple not-for-profits that are dedicated to helping women have greater financial fluency. And the truth is that whether you're a man or a woman, if you don't understand the basics of how money works, how much financial success can you have? What's the sense in allowing the man to manage the finances if he doesn't really understand them? Did you know that there are only 17 states in the United States that teach basic financial planning and management at the high school level? Did you also know that those states have higher levels of students completing financial aid forms and getting financial aid and lowering their costs? They have lower default rates on financial aid loans. They have lower default rates on credit cards. The states where students, male and female, are actually being taught this have more sound economic relationships overall. The fact of the matter is, I have clients who are women who are financial investors who kick the crap out of the male investors. It's not a uniquely male skill. They have a different approach. They have a different way of looking at it. And because they have a different and unique way of looking at it, they're highly competitive in that field. The truth is that if we want to learn something, we can. Couples can cross-train. Men can lean into emotional fluency and women can lean into financial fluency. This is all possible, easy, and doable. So what I'm encouraging you to do is, instead of throwing out labels like man-keeping, or men don't use it anymore, maybe some women do, women-keeping, she's a kept woman. Maybe that's what women who are working say about women who decide to be stay-at-home moms. Instead of throwing out these kinds of terms, which are, let's be honest, diminutive, why don't we start looking at areas of growth? A label is a way of objectifying and two-dimensionalizing someone and or a situation. What if we instead identified where we need help and asked for that person to step into it? And when they say, I don't know, I'm not sure, I can't, we build them up instead of tearing them down. True equality comes from the ability to manage tasks across the spectrum. Does it mean that men will be better at child-rearing than women? Sometimes. But in all likelihood, they won't be as emotionally attentive because their brains are not wired for it, but they can be emotionally attentive. Does it mean that women will manage long-term finances better than men? That may actually be simpler in a lot of ways. Maybe it doesn't, but we won't know until we move there. Honestly, I actually think it's going to be easier because women have already moved down that road. They've already developed the linear thinking side of their brains, and the education system encourages them to. Whereas the education system does not encourage emotional development, emotional fluency. A listener question is, We're different by nature. Can we lead together without losing that? That is a great question. At what point do we slip into androgyny? For those of us who are in opposite sex marriages, part of the attraction is there's something really different on the other side. Though truthfully, studies show that even in opposite sex marriages, we tend to marry people who are more like us than different from us. Fact is that the most successful marriages lean into the strengths of each individual. What that means is, depending on their innate ability and skills, their education and training and development, the qualities, emotional qualities, that where they have strengths and where they have weaknesses, the most successful marriages are partnerships where one partner embraces one set of tasks and the other partner embraces the other set of tasks. But they do not do it completely independent of each other. They had a powwow, they sit down, they focus on their shared vision, they break down the milestones and tasks working towards that shared vision, and then, and only then, the person who has the strengths in a particular area relative to a specific milestone jumps in and takes over that milestone and is responsible for it. The most successful partnerships are partnerships where every piece of shared vision and goal is articulated, mapped out with milestones and areas of responsibility. Do people drop the ball? Heck yeah. But the difference is when it's mapped out and each person has responsibilities based on either their strengths or their potential strengths, they can develop and grow into that role and be more successful in it, and they're much more likely to get it done and get it done well. Men and women need to grow and develop to some extent also in what we're going to call their weaknesses. They need to do it just because it gives them some appreciation of the other person's strengths. When I sit down with my daughters to have an emotionally nuanced discussion about their future marriage, I feel like I'm working with stone knives compared to my wife, who is working with a robotic scalpel. My wife and my daughters communicate so much better than I do with them. And yet, when I do it, they still know that I love them. They see that I'm making the effort. They recognize that I'm operating in an area of less skill than my wife and appreciate that I'm present for them in that way. It's more about the feeling that drives what we're doing than actually what we're doing. And here's the other thing is, we want to have some proficiency even in our partner's area of expertise because stuff happens. One year my wife had major surgery, and could not be home. And it was a tradition that we have a specific holiday where we have latkes, and she couldn't be there. And even though she's made latkes far more often than me and she's better at it, I stepped in and I made the latkes. I did a pretty good job. It wasn't the same as when she does it. We all noticed she was missing, and our children understood that I was carrying on the tradition, that because this thing that she enjoys doing is much better at doing than I am, is something that we do traditionally as a family. I didn't sit there and go, I got two left thumbs, I can't do it. I stepped in and I did the work, and it was appreciated, and it was memorable. My children will never forget when I made those latkes. Never. They'll never forget. They remember her. Mostly we talk about it as mom was in the hospital and she was so sick, but the structure, the traditions that represent the value of our family move forward because as partners, we were very clear that if one person is sick or can't attend to it, the other one needs to tag in. And that's why, guys, we need to be emotionally fluent. And that's why, ladies, if you're not already financially fluent, you need to be. That is why. And with that, the next episode is going to be about why she's tired of carrying that emotional load. And trust me, she is. Hey, if you like what you're hearing here, maybe you're liking this new format, 2 cameras, better lighting, better quality video. Let people know. Rich Your Relationship is growing and expanding. Share it, like it, subscribe. Show us that you're taking in what we're putting out here. Give us suggestions for what you'd like to hear, and we will take care of it. Thank you. Have a wonderful day and an amazing tomorrow.